Hello everyone, Heather Lou here, founder of Closet Core Patterns and Core Fabrics, coming to you with a Closet Core First, which is a free video sew-along on YouTube for our latest pattern, the Joe jumpsuit and dress. And this is the first time that we've done a video sew-along. We've done lots of photo sew-alongs over the years, and obviously we also have a library of sewing classes on specific topics, on everything from making jeans to tailoring to swimsuits. But for Joe, we wanted to do a video sew-along because this is one of maybe our all-time favorite patterns we've ever designed, but it is a more ambitious make, and we didn't want people to feel overwhelmed or nervous to get started. We wanted to be able to kind of walk you through the entire stage of construction from start to finish, and hopefully leave not only with an incredible garment that is going to make you very happy and blow the minds of everybody when you tell them that you made it, but also hopefully with some new skills and more confident sewing, which is like the best thing that you can ever ask for when you're done sewing a project, that you feel better about yourself and better about your skills. So that's what we're gonna do with the Joe dress and jumpsuit. So what is it about this pattern that makes it unique and special? I kind of get into it in more depth in our design story video, which we'll link to below. Caveat, anytime I'm talking about a product or a video or a blog post going forward, probably go check the down below and we've probably linked to it there. But even though I get into it a bit in the design story, I can give you a little bit of a brief. Essentially what's special about Joe is this sleeve. And we're calling it a croissant sleeve. Amy, our marketing manager, and I had a couple glasses of wine one night, and she said, "It's a croissant." I was like, "It is a croissant." So that's what we're calling it, a croissant. And we're seeing these a lot in fashion right now. And essentially what it is a sleeve that is cut on. It's not a separate piece. We don't have a seam here. There's no arm side. There's no separate sleeve. It's all one piece. And how we create shape and structure is with a big curve here. And you have a choice of two curves. So you can either go big sleeve energy like I have right now. This is like the most croissant. It's like extra croissant. Or you can do the smaller sleeve, which is just a less pronounced curve. And so it's a little bit more tapered and fitted to the body slightly. And we also have a dart here in the underarm. So this is what kind of gives the sleeve mobility and a little bit of structure and shaping, in addition to some bust darts that we have under here. One thing I just want to point out in terms of how this feels to wear, I find them exceptionally comfortable. I have 3 now. I've been wearing them nonstop. This is the one that I'm going to make in the class. I'm recording this in the future. You're gonna watch me make this particular jumpsuit. I find them super comfortable, but one thing I do wanna call out when you're working on fitting and you're sewing your muslin, which I really recommend for this pattern, just side note, just in general, when it's a new pattern, especially if you've never sewn one of our patterns before, make a muslin. It's gonna take an hour or two, and it's so worthwhile. You're gonna, hopefully resolve any fit issues right in the muslin stage, and then you don't end up with a garment that has fit issues and you're not happy with. This is a big involved sew. This isn't something you're gonna whip up in an afternoon. This is a weekend project, and I really don't want you to spend all this time sewing it only to find out you don't like the way it fits, or that the darts are in the wrong spot, or it's too big in the waist. Just take a moment and make a muslin. However, when you're making your muslin, I don't want you to overfit. And I have noticed a tendency in the sewing community, because we're so used to being able to make things fit us perfectly, that people expect that all garments should give them a full 180-degree range of movement. And sometimes that's just not the case. When you have a sleeve like this, the drama and the beauty of this sleeve and this structure has its limitations. And one of those limitations is that as I start to raise my arm, where the sleeve hem is hitting right now, I can't really raise my arm more than this. If I want it, I can. I just need to push the sleeve up, and then I can have my full range of motion. So I don't want you to try this on and then be like, oh, I can only raise my arm to here. This isn't a cartwheel doing dress, okay? We're not doing gymnastics in this. We're looking fabulous while we're wearing this. And so sometimes you have to make concessions for looking fabulous, and that might mean that it's not something that you can do a cartwheel in unless you push your sleeves up. So I just want to call that out, because I don't want anybody to start overfitting, because if you start messing with the structure of this, it's going to completely lose all of its kind of drama and the point of it. So in terms of fitting, I'm not going to cover that in this sew along. Down below we're going to link to a blog post that we wrote about fitting that's going to include lots of information about different fitting modifications that you can make using this pattern. So I'm not going to cover that in this sew along. The other thing I'm not going to cover in this sew along is actually cutting out your pattern. I'm hoping you can kind of take care of that on your own, that you know how to like find a grain line and line up your pattern pieces. In regards to that, I would say that this is more of an intermediate to advanced project. Having said that, I think anybody at any level can make this, provided that they feel confident and can sew straight seams. I think that's really the most important component. I'm going to teach you how to install a zipper. I'm going to teach you how to do the bias tape. I'm going to teach you how to do all of that. But if you're still at that point in your sewing practice where you really struggle to have even consistent seams, this project might be challenging for you, because so much of this sewing this is really sewing straight and sewing accurately. So, you know, even if you've just been sewing for a little while, I believe in you. You can absolutely make this. But if your seams are still looking like this, maybe you want to make this and make it the project that's going to get you sewing those straight seams. The other thing that is special about Jo, in addition to the shape of this sleeve, is the finish. And it's called, what we're using for this seam is called a slot seam finish. So we had to really dig around in our old sewing books to find it. And we are doing a modified version of a traditional slot seam. But essentially what it is this piece, although it looks like this piece is sewn to this piece, it's not. There's actually an insert in the middle. There's a piece connecting these two pieces. And then we finish these seams with bias tape, and we press them towards the middle, and we stitch them in place along this insert. So there's actually 3 pattern pieces here in addition to that bias tape. Why did we do that? Well, first of all, it looks amazing. Second of all, it gives the sleeve structure and shape. And while I'm sitting here and talking to you, the sleeve isn't completely collapsing because it has this structure that's given to it by the seam finish. So we're going to be teaching you this new seam finish. If you've ever sewn in bias tape before, it's not going to be completely new, but we're still kind of doing it in a different and unique way. And so I'm hoping that you're going to be excited and enjoy making this. And then in terms of how we're going to structure the sew along, we're doing this, obviously our intro video now, where I'm giving you the heads up, letting you know what's happening, talking about supplies and fabric. And then in the next 4 lessons, we're breaking it down basically by section. So we're going to have 1 video to sew the bodice. We're going to have 1 video to sew the pants, 1 video to sew the skirt, and then a 4th video where we install the waistband and we sew the zipper. So we're really going to cover every part of this. I've shared lots of information and lots of little tips and tricks. So I'm hoping even beyond just sewing this, you're going to pick up some new things that you've never learned before. And more than anything, I just hope we have fun. I love sewing. I love teaching people how to sew. And I think that you're really going to enjoy making this. And I think you're going to end up with something really unique and wonderful that you're going to be really excited about wearing and telling people that you made. It's the best part. So the most important thing that you want to look for when you're choosing a fabric for Jo is something that is a stable woven. So no knits and nothing kind of drapey or fluid or soft, or you want something that's got heft and body and that's going to have a little bit of structure and stability so that you have a nice structured shape for this sleeve. This is quite an architectural pattern. We've got darts, we've got pockets, we've got this is something that needs to stand up, and you need a fabric that's going to stand up with you. So when I'm talking about stable wovens, I'm talking about linen, not super light handkerchief linens. I'm talking about a nice mid-weight linen. A perfect example is this Jo dress that we made using a mid-weight linen from Core Fabrics. So the mid-weight line that we have at Core is amazing. It's made in Europe. It's my favorite linen ever. We've got like a million colors, including this beautiful yellow. And it's just the perfect weight for this dress. So if you wanted something that was a little bit drapier, like maybe not so crisp and structured as like a crisper cotton, I think linen's a great option. It's summery, it's breathable, it's gorgeous. Otherwise, I'd like you to look at cotton, and obviously cotton comes in a million different varieties. So right now I am wearing a cotton sateen that has a little bit of stretch. This is also from Core Fabrics, and I believe we're going to offer this as a kit. So if any of the samples that you've been seeing online strike your fancy, we do have kits that include everything that you need, so you can kind of get everything one-stop shop. This cotton is like a little bit more structured. It's a little bit thicker. I mean, if I was to guess the GSM off the top of my head, I'm going to say it's about 220, 230. And it's quite crisp, but it's got a little bit of stretch. So you could choose stretch wovens for this, provided they're not too stretchy. Like I wouldn't do anything with more than 2% spandex in it. But certainly that little bit of span does give you a little bit more comfort. So a cotton sateen, like the one that I'm wearing right now, is wonderful. Something like this textured cotton, I would say the GSM on this is probably like 170, 180. So it's on the lighter weight in terms of fabric weight, but it's crisp and it's got a good structure to it. And we made a number of the samples that you'll probably have seen in our photo shoots. We're using this textured cotton. So it's one of our favorite fabrics in general because it does so many different things and it works really well for this. You might also want to look at cotton poplin, cotton broadcloth, lightweight cotton denim shirting. Like this one is a lightweight non-stretch denim, very light. This is probably like a 5, 6, 7 ounce denim. It's not like I wouldn't make a pair of jeans with this, but I certainly would make a Joe jumpsuit. I would even maybe look at a twill, like a lightweight twill. Let's say like a 7 ounce twill would also work, but I wouldn't necessarily go anything like a heavy denim or a canvas or a twill. I think those might end up being too heavy because of the waistband that we're sewing and the zipper. It might end up getting a little bit too intense. That said, I don't think it's impossible. If you have your heart set on a heavyweight structured Joe jumpsuit in like a 10 or 11 ounce denim, I want to see it and I want you to tell me about how it went. I'm sure it's going to look great. Otherwise, try to stay in these like light to midweight linen and cotton family and you're going to be in great shape. Now, if you're still kind of struggling with fabric and you're not sure exactly which to pick, we've been there. If you head over to Core Fabrics, in the top menu, we have something called Perfect Match. If you click on that and you click on Joe, maybe we'll actually link to the Joe Perfect Match collection down below, so I'll save you some clicking around. But what we do at Core Fabrics is we curate fabrics for every closet core pattern, and so you don't necessarily have to go and buy any of these fabrics, but if you just need some ideas, that's a really good place to get started because you can see right off the bat what kind of fabrics we're recommending for this pattern, and then, you know, if you have a local brick and mortar, another fabric store you want to go get it from, you'll kind of know what to look for. So now that you understand what kind of fabric you're looking for, let's go take a look at the kind of supplies that you're going to need in order to make your Joe jumpsuit. First thing is a tailor's ham. This is kind of a must-have, I think, in your sewing studio, but what it does is let you press curved areas and curved seams, and we're going to be using it a lot to make Joe. If you don't have one, you can always use like a rolled up towel or something, but I really recommend having this in your sewing setup. We also love a clapper. So what this does is when you press a seam and you hit it with some steam, you put the clapper on it. It's a hard wood. It sucks up the steam and the heat, and it really helps anchor and lock your seams. So definitely not a requirement, but really nice to have. This custom press to impress clapper is in stock at our shop, Core Fabrics. Of course, anytime you're sewing, you need some pins. I like metal pins with glass heads because I can press over them and I'm not worried about the head melting. I also love a good magnetic pin cushion because when you're sewing and you're just taking your needles out, you can just throw them at this thing and it's going to pick them up. And then if you have any at the end of the day, you can pick them up as well. So these pins and this cushion are also in stock at Core Fabrics. Another nice to have but not mandatory are some clips. There are a few times where pins, either the seam is too thick or it's just a little bit tricky, and I always like having a couple clips on hand when a pin doesn't really want to do the job. Not mandatory, but if you have some, you might find you're using them. Needles, of course. Every time you start a new project, you should put a new needle in your machine. Make sure that it is rated for the fabric that you're using. We're also going to be doing just a little bit of hand sewing, hopefully not enough to scare you, so make sure you have a decent hand sewing needle at hand. You're also going to need a marking tool. This is just a Clover erasable marker. You might also want to have a chalk marker. These Chicaner ones are great because I think they mark equally well in either direction. Other brands tend to sometimes get stuck. This Chicaner is in stock at Core Fabrics, but you're definitely just going to want something that's going to disappear and isn't going to permanently mar your fabric. You will want a hook and eye, so we're going to be finishing the neckline of Joe for both views with a hook and eye, so make sure you have one of these. You can buy these in bulk and they last forever, so if you get a little box, you'll probably have it for the next 10 years. Another nice to have but not requirement is this edge stitch foot. Regardless of your machine, it's easy to find inexpensive versions of these online. But what it does is it has this little guide down the center of it. So when you're trying to get really even top stitching, particularly when you're top stitching along a fixed edge, this rests against that edge and helps you get really consistent top stitching lines. I will show you how to get top stitching lines without this, but I really recommend having an edge stitch foot. Of course, you're going to want some thread snips to have these next to your machine, very handy as you're trimming threads. I also love applique scissors. I will show you on camera how I use these, but again, I think these are kind of a must-have in your sewing setup. They're really great for grading seams because this duckbill part helps prevent the seam underneath from getting trimmed. So if you're grading a seam, you're going to make sure that you're only trimming the top one and leaving the under one or the underside untrimmed. So highly recommend getting a pair of duckbill scissors. Again, we have these at Core Fabrics. Another nice to have, but not a requirement, is a sewing guide. So this sticks on your machine, and if you're trying to sew really consistent, let's say 1/2 inch lines like we're going to be doing while we're sewing Joe, you stick this on your machine, and it just gives you an edge to rest your seams against. I think this is made by Clover. You can also substitute a stack of Post-its because that stack of Post-its will also give you a little edge to rest against. So a great nice to have, this or a stack of Post-its. You'll also need a seam gauge of some kind. I like these metal ones with the little slider bit because it lets me adjust. So if I want a 1/2 inch or an inch, it gives me that option to slide it down. But if you have any kind of seam gauge, you'll do, even a ruler will work in a pinch. Also, we'll need some 1 inch elastic, about 1 yard. This is braided. If you can get no roll, even better. But you'll definitely need some to put into your waistband. If you don't have 1 inch wide, you could maybe get away with 3/4 of an inch, but we have both kinds in stock at Core Fabrics. Of course, you're going to need thread for your project. Depending on what fabric and bias tape you're using to make Joe, you may need more than one color. At the very least, you want one that's going to match your bias tape. You don't want contrast stitching on your bias tape. But if your fabric is a different color, you might need a different color for your fabric. So that's just something to keep in mind. And this kind, with the little green bottom, is made from recycled polyester. I, at all times, try to avoid using virgin polyester in my sewing projects because it's coming from non-renewable oil resources. This particular thread is made from recycled water bottles, and we carry a full line of colors at Core Fabrics. Of course, you can use any thread that you want. I just wanted to call out how important it is to use recycled poly thread when you can. You're also going to need some kind of fusible interfacing. So fusible interfacing by the yard is obviously okay. You want it to be the same weight of your fabric. You don't want to use something that's too heavy. And we provide pattern pieces for a few areas that need to be interfaced. I also like using this fusible stay tape, so it's great when you just need to stabilize a certain seam, so like a neckline seam or just a small area. You don't want to have to go pull out your fusible interfacing. This stuff is great, and again, we carry it at Core Fabrics. You don't need the stay tape, but you do need the interfacing. You'll also need a zipper, and we're not talking about an invisible zipper here. We're talking about a traditional, regular, conventional zipper, however you want to call it, and you're looking for something that's about 22 inches long. If it's a little bit shorter or a little bit longer, you'll probably be okay, but I wouldn't go shorter than 20 inches. If it's much longer, no problem. I'm going to show you actually how to shorten a zipper, which is what I'm about to do actually on this one. I've already trimmed it and I'm about to shorten it. And what you want ideally is a zipper pull that has a big enough hole in it that you can feed something through, because we're going to be attaching a zipper pull to this garment, and so you want something that's got a bit of a hole that you can feed it through. If the hole's really small and a little piece of fabric's not going to go through, a piece of ribbon also works in a pinch. So if you have a piece of ribbon, you can also substitute that, but just make sure you have a traditional zipper. And I recommend maybe not doing a metal one. It might be kind of cold and heavy against your skin. A plastic zipper would be great, and even better if you can find one that's made from recycled plastic. Last but not least, bias tape. This is one of the most important, if not the most important notion of this project. Bias tape is what makes the Joe dress and jumpsuit so special. It has to be a 1/2 inch unless you want to go and do some major pattern modifications, because the pattern is drafted for 1/2 inch tape. This particular 1/2 inch tape is pre-made. It's custom made for us at Core Fabrics. If you're looking for high quality stuff, I suggest you go check it out. It's made from a really silky poplin, 100% cotton, super soft, really easy to work with, comes in a lot of colors. We love this, but of course you can use any kind of pre-made bias tape from any big box store. Although I don't love the stuff that has polyester in it. You know, I don't love virgin polyester, but I also just don't love the way it handles. This is much softer and more fluid. If you don't want to purchase bias tape, let's say you're making a linen jumpsuit and you want to have coordinating tape, you can absolutely make your own, but you will need a 1-inch bias tape maker. So what this does is convert your 2-inch wide bias tape into something that looks like this. And again, these are pretty easy to find. You can find them online quite easily. You don't have to have them. If you Google around, you can probably figure out how to make double fold bias tape without one, but it does make everything a lot easier. And that's it for supplies for the Joe dress and jumpsuit. Of course, you're also going to need a sewing machine, ideally one that has a zigzag stitch, because we will be sewing bar tacks, and that's essentially what a bar tack is. It's a zigzag stitch. If you have a serger, great, we'll be using it. And of course, you'll also need an iron and an ironing board. Okay, I hope you're feeling a little bit more confident about gathering the fabric and supplies that you will need to make your Joe dress or jumpsuit. The next steps for you are to figure out what size you're making. You know, if you're going in our 0 to 20 range that has like a B cup, or if you want to go into our 14 to 32 that has a D cup for bigger busted folks. I want you to figure out that size. I want you to make your muslin, and then if you're having any fit issues, you can head over to the blog where we're going to be sharing all the fitting help and kind of fit adjustments that you might need to make for this specific pattern. And then once that's done, I want you to actually cut out your fabric. So you're going to be able to go into the next lesson with me ready to go and ready to sew your bodice, which is really exciting. In the meantime, if you want to learn how to make a blazer or a pair of jeans or a swimsuit or lingerie, or if you just want to bone up on your skills and learn all of the basics of sewing right from the beginning, we have a really great library of online sewing classes on our website where we get even more in depth about specific sewing topics. Like I said, I love teaching people how to sew, and we have taught thousands of people in those classes. So if you're looking to expand your sewing skills, I highly suggest visiting our site and checking out some of our classes. In the meantime, if you are enjoying this sew along, please like and subscribe the video. It's a new thing for us. We're excited about it, and we're really excited about this pattern, and I can't wait to teach you how to make it. So I will see you in the next lesson.